This is a collection of images from the capital of Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, and it seems to be people celebrating the military leader Ibrahim Traoré.
Can you describe a bit more in detail what we see in these photos?
Yes, we see large groups of people gathering. It seems to be in the central square in the capital, in the middle. Then we see people holding up banners with the name of Ibrahim Traoré, the military leader in Burkina Faso. And we also see Burkinabe flags, in addition to a Russian flag or two, maybe. And then we see signs and banners expressing resentment against France. So one sign saying that France should leave, and the other one a French flag with a cross over it. And then finally, there's a sign celebrating the regional collaboration between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso in the Sahelian State Alliance, AES.
Okay, thank you, Jesper. So, hello and welcome to this Science to Policy conversation. The photos we've just heard Jesper describe are from the recent demonstrations in Burkina Faso. And we'll come back to those later because they have a connection to the topic we'll discuss today, which is the Africa strategies of the Nordic countries. My name is Henrik Alfsson. I'm a communications officer at the Nordic Africa Institute. And sitting here next to me is my colleague Jesper Bjarnesen, who is a senior researcher at the Institute. He does research mainly on migration and mobility, but also on street protests and contested elections. And Jesper, you've studied the Africa strategies of the Nordic countries, more specifically those of Finland from 2021, and the Danish strategy from 2024, and also the Norwegian from 2024. But you've also looked a bit at the Swedish and Icelandic Africa strategies. So, which are the overall trends that you've seen in these strategies?
Right. Thank you, Henrik. Yes, so we were a group of 9 colleagues who took an interest in understanding how the Nordic countries are reshaping their relationships or their strategies towards Africa. And the overall impression is that there's more business than usual than any dramatic changes in the Nordic strategic approaches. What we also see as a common trend is a shared commitment to a more equal partnership. This is a rhetoric that's been around for a long time, but there's a sort of renewed will to engage in more equal terms with African actors and partners.
So together with this team of researchers here at the Nordic Africa Institute, you've written this policy note, the Nordic Africa strategies, distinct, not incompatible. And there's one quote that possibly that you lifted from the Danish strategy. It's better offers, less moralism.
Yeah.
Could you get a little bit into what that actually means?
Yes, this is something that the Danish Foreign Minister, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, has been promoting for quite a while. He also calls it a relationship shoulder to shoulder, which again sort of suggests a more equal relationship. That particular quote about less moralism, I think, refers to a history of Nordic Africa or Danish Africa relations where the global North has taken kind of a paternalistic attitude towards African states and actors. For example, there's the sentiment that the Nordic countries are bringing values and ideas that African partners lack, so it becomes this kind of an unequal relationship. So the notion of less moralism, on the one hand, is about not having that kind of an unequal power relationship. If you want to be a little bit more critical, you could also say that it's more of a no questions asked policy at a time where many African states are moving towards less democracy and more authoritarianism. So it's also kind of a signal that Denmark is saying we might not be as strict in our expectations to the governments we're collaborating with. So there are those two sides to it.
So looking at the timing also, these are the first comprehensive or holistic Africa strategies of the Nordic countries. Why do they come now? and why have they not come before?
I think everyone will recognize that there's a lot of change in the world these days. Geopolitically, alliances are changing. New actors are becoming more influential. Others are maybe fading. And I think the Nordic countries are also trying to react to the changing geopolitics in the world. And one part of that is that Africa as a world region is gaining more visibility and more influence, for example, in UN fora, but also in sort of their relationships with Europe, for example. So I think the Nordic countries are trying to react to that changing set of circumstances in the world.
Okay, so diving in a bit more specifically on each one of these strategies, could you, in a short way, describe the main features of each one?
Yeah. Well, as we say in the policy note, I mean, the three Nordic strategies that we're looking closely at, the Finnish, the Norwegian, and the Danish, are quite similar overall. But what we see is that the Finnish strategy, for example, places a lot of emphasis on trade. That component is also present in the others, but Finland is pledging to double its trade with Africa within the next short period of time. So there's really a commitment to that. In the Danish strategy, what stands out a little bit is a stronger emphasis on migration governance. There's a rationale that, for example, investments in peacekeeping are linked to migration because an increased number of conflicts in Africa might lead to more people fleeing the continent, for example, towards Europe. So migration is quite a strong component in the Danish strategy. And Norway, on the one hand, is keeping its commitment to peacekeeping as a strong factor in its strategy, but it is also emphasizing a green transition and sort of innovation around green solutions as a strong component in its strategy. So there are many commonalities, but some sort of issues stand out.
Thank you. So those are the different differences. But if you would look at, in your analysis, you also talk about how the Nordic countries can align their Africa strategies. What would they gain from aligning them, and in which areas can they develop that further?
Well, I think this is, geopolitically speaking, a time where the Nordic region can gain a lot from collaborating. For example, Europe overall, and France in particular, is losing influence in Africa, and new actors are coming onto the scene. For example, Russia, China, India, a lot of other actors are present in African geopolitics. So the Nordic region can gain from finding common ground and acting as a unified regional body in a way. I think that the Nordic countries share a set of values that are also present in their strategies, a commitment to, on the one hand, sort of basic democratic values of good governance and for example, gender equality, although we are noting that the Danish strategy is becoming a bit weaker on that. But there's also a shared Nordic commitment to the multilateral system, which includes strengthening Africa's voice in the UN Security Council and other UN forums. So there are a lot of shared values and ideas already present in the strategies. And our point is that this could be used to leverage Nordic influence, especially on the multilateral scene, further than what the Nordic countries could do by themselves.
Okay, so going back again to the images where we started, the demonstrations in Burkina Faso, and there are similar demonstrations across West Africa today. What are the consequences or potential consequences of the Nordic countries aligning their Africa strategies for these people that we see on the images?
Well, as I said in the beginning, we noted that there were, for example, Russian flags present on these images, and citizens in Burkina Faso and other countries in West Africa are not blind to the geopolitical changes happening in the world. An important part of the message of the military leader in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, is that Europe has been exploiting its relations with Africa historically, and there's a need for a fundamental change. And that message is resonating with people on the street in Burkina Faso, but also across the continent and even outside the continent. there is a will for these more equal relationships that the Nordic strategies are also acknowledging. So this is, geopolitically speaking, a time when the Nordic region needs to show that it is willing to adapt, listen, and change to the current sort of winds that are blowing in the world.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you for sharing your knowledge on this topic. We're going to wrap up now, but before we wrap up, I'd just like to once again draw the attention of our readers and listeners to this policy note that we've been discussing, authored by Jesper and the team of researchers here at the Nordic Africa Institute. The Nordic Africa Strategies, Distinct but Not Incompatible is the title of the policy note. And it can be downloaded for free from our website, www.nai.se. Thank you for listening.